Welcome to Practicing Life podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Pitzer. So, what is the topic today? Is water alive? One of the statements I heard recently is that water is alive. And the reasoning behind it is because it was a molecule. It was like just that simple. And so this got me thinking because water is such an important aspect of our life. It is probably one of the most fundamental elements in this world. And just like on our last episode, I talked about energy. The energy is within us, it is all around us. Everything has energy. Water is really simple. And so, my brain starts going down these lovely rabbit holes, and then I have to share with you guys. So, water, as you probably remember from, whatever grade level in school, is made up of two hydrogens and one oxygen. I never really liked, this is considered chemistry. I never really liked the subject. Okay. I never really cared about atoms. So, I'm not going to talk to you about these school subjects. But what I do want to talk about is that, water makes life possible, that all living things, like all living things and all organisms need water. Water is like so important that like there are certain organisms in life that don't need oxygen, but everything needs water. And just like energy, water is inside of us. Our body is made up of like 70% or more of water. Our brain is made up of 95%. There's some variances always. Scientists all over the world are going to disagree about things, but your brain is essentially 95% water. You know what I think is so freaking fascinating about that? Because as a hypnotist that I'm always talking to you about the brain and how it functions and how it works. Well, guess what? Your subconscious, or if you like to say unconscious, the subconscious part of your brain makes up 95%. So 95% of your decisions are actually made from your subconscious. This is something that you may have heard in my past episodes. Well, now there's this correlation in my brain that your brain is 95% water. No coincidence that your subconscious is also 95% of your brain. And then what this episode is going to go into and links to the subconscious, oh, just makes me so happy and excited, is that, what scientists have found and are continuing to discover, and more research is obviously going to be done on this, is that water has a consciousness. So though scientists would say that it is not alive, and it is not alive because it does not reproduce, it doesn't make babies, like it doesn't need nutrients, it doesn't die. So it's not alive. However, scientists are finding that it has a consciousness. And if you are walking the spiritual path, if you are into esoteric things as I am, this may really appeal to you as it appeals to me, because you're in the esoteric, the spiritual path, enlightenment, it is about understanding consciousness more and becoming more consciousness. And the divine mind, whether you think that is within you, outside of you, a God, whatever it is that you believe, right? It is essentially a consciousness. And so when you think about your subconscious being 95% water, and also aware a lot of your ability to access consciousness comes from, I find this super, super fascinating. So let's get into the nitty gritty. Like, why is it that scientists are saying that water has consciousness? Like, how is that even possible? Right. So, but as you may or may not know, just because I have to have fun in life, outside of doing stuff with neuroscience, neuroplasticity, like hypnotism stuff, coaching people to help them understand who they are, I also write fantasy. So, and I love fantasy. I love make believe. I love, the impossible becoming possible in your brain. I love the fact that, like, You can explore things in fantasy. And so in fantasy, so that if you're watching my YouTube video up on the wall, you can see my book, The Birth Challenge. Um, in fantasy, sometimes you have shape shifters, and water is essentially a shape shape shifter. And this is really cool. Like, like, because sometimes I think about, well, who first came up with the first like werewolf, or who first came up with the first vampire? And the same thing can be said too. Like, who first came up with like shape shifting? I'm like, nature all around us is providing us with the answers and giving us things to think about. So, water is a shape shifter. I mean, it turns from liquid to gas, solid. It is constantly shaping its shift. It is always in motion. And what's really cool about water is it's powerful. Scientists have said, certain scientists have said that water's function is to provide life with power. So, in water in itself provides us with power. Like when we think about hydroelectric power, like that is coming from water. So water can be used to create like electricity or whatever it is that they are using it for. But recently I went to canyons like the Grand Canyon, Glen Canyon, and I went to the lower antelopes in Page, Arizona. And in this particular canyon is created because of water. And it's such a beautiful, if you've never seen pictures of the upper or lower Antelope Canyons, wow, they're so freaking amazing. But basically the power of water is eroding rock, which creates these phenomenal nature, things that you can go and see for vacations or, maybe you live by them. But anyway, so water is so powerful. It We cannot survive without water. Water provides us power within us, power to use as tools to create our electricity. And so, the function of water is super important in our world. Our brain is 95%. Our body is like 70% water. So let's go into, why do they say water has consciousness? And there's a couple of scientists out there, but the one that is most known, and if you haven't heard of it, a scientist by the name of Dr. Marsu Monto. If I say that wrong, I am super sorry. I believe he's Japanese. But in 1990, Dr. Marsuo Monto did a series of experiments to test how water was affected by various types of sound frequencies, such as prayers, musics, positive and negative words. And so basically what he did was he took water, he froze it, he put it under a microscope after subjecting it to different types of frequencies, and then he took pictures. And so then these pictures became part of his book that he later wrote, which is what called the Hidden Message in Water. So he wrote this book, and he's done presentations and things like this to show people, and you can do your own research, and you can even look up these pictures for yourself. But basically, in this experiment, he did a number of things. So he may have played classical music to the frozen water and then took pictures to see how the water responded. And then he played hard rock music, and he did it with prayers, and like he did it with positive, negative words. So like on the positive and negative words, for instance, um, he found that when he spoke positively, the water responded in symmetrical and aesthetically pleasing images. Like the images, they were larger, they formed very clear images, and they were bright. That's my interpretation, not as what is written in the book or what is written and whatever. I saw these pictures for myself, and when I looked at them, when they showed like the prayers or the positive words, or they showed the ones with classical musicals, like my interpretation when I saw these pictures is, wow, like the water formed clear defined shapes. And the water was often like clear looking, white looking, like crystallized looking. And they were often like kind of big, taking up space, as I said in my energy podcast or episode. Whereas when they spoke negative words, or if they listened to heavy metal or rap or things like that, the shapes were like they were water. They were like they looked like a bubble to me. They looked like a bubble, but they were often like maybe splats in them, like splatches, and they were often the water looked dark and dirty. It was very interesting. So like in the light versus the dark, and in the light you had this beautiful crystallized, almost like some like a snowflake. One looked like a snowflake, and then in the dark you had stuff that looked like water had been stabbed with holes in it, and it was dark and ugly. Okay, my interpretation only. So he was really fascinated by this, and he repeated this study, and he repeated it on food this time instead of water. So I'm just sharing with you my lovely need to learn things. So, and I actually have another experiment that I can share with you, but I don't remember who the scientist was that did it. But anyway, for Dr. Masuo Mato, he took rice, and he on one set of rice, he told it nothing but like, I love you, positive things. And on the other one, he said to it, you fool. And he did this for 30 days straight. And at the end of 30 days, what he found was the white rice, the rice that he said, I love you too. It was white. And the one that he was saying, you fool, to, it was rotting. And the picture that if you want to go and look this up, the picture which shows you that it was like it was rotting from the base all the way up. Now, if you listen to my past episode on energy, when I was talking about how your body dies from your feet up, like the energy drains from your feet up to the crown of your chakra, I found this such synchronicity, right? So even in the rice was rotting from the base going up to the top, and it was like this tubular stack of rice. That's how I would tell you if you can't vision this, because you may be visioning a bowl or something like that. Anyway, so this was one experiment done, and then there was another experiment done separate from water and rice, separate from this, but it makes me think of the story because I tell my kids this. I also tell my husband. I won't cry about that, but talking. I talk often about the power of your words, especially your self talk. It's super important to me because everything you say, it it is created. Everything you say and everything you think is creating something, even if it doesn't match, like like matching the crisscross things. But whatever you are saying is coming into fruition, whatever you're thinking. And so in this one experiment, separate from this water experiment, the one that I tell my kids is that someone had done an experiment where they bought two of the same plants, identical plants, same house, and they put the plants in two different rooms along the same wall. And so the wall had the same amount of sunlight based on, where they were positioning. And so in one room, in like let's say room A, they went in and they only had positive self-talk in this room. So if they were talking, anything they said was something that made them feel good. And then in the other room, they said negative things about themselves, about the world, whatever. So you had one room of positivity, one room of negativity, and the plants were identical. They were identical in age, size, shape, everything to start with. And at the end of this experiment, the room that had positivity in it, the plant was thriving. Whereas the other room, the plant had died. And I bring this story up to like my kids and to my husband to remind them of the impact that their words are making, that there is resonance, there is frequency, there is energy behind your words, and it is creating a ripple effect outside of you. And your words are so important. You are so important. You have so much power. Okay. And and we often forget this, and this is why I bring up the story to my children, to let them know in a visual way, in a metaphoric way that helps them understand how impactful they are and their words are. And so coming back to this whole water experiment, this is kind of the same thing. This is why they say that water has a consciousness. Now, there was another study done by Lynne, I can't remember, and this female, yay, female scientist, was also concluding the same evidence that water has that consciousness to it, and they were further saying that water has a memory to it. And so I thought that was really interesting because, it's not living, right? It can't reproduce. And so I was kind of confused, like, how does it have a memory to it? And so I have not read this scientist's book. Let me see if I wrote down the name of it so that I can share with you guys. Maybe over here. I didn't, but if I can find it, I will put it in the show notes. So the other thing I would tell you about is that there was research done in a documentary created called The Great Experiment. Okay, so for all of you out there, this is more of like one of those conspiracy theory documents, and where there's smoke, there's fire, but at the same time, conspiracy theories are, hard to track down the truth to them. So, smoke. But you don't know exactly where that fire started, how it started, who started it, right? There's so many unknown things to conspiracy theories. But so this is called The Great Mystery. And in this documentary, it was talking about how a group of scientists, were hired for the military to come together and to create a bacteriological weapon. So they were creating something that was going to hurt Southeast Asia. And in the middle of their experiment in creating something, all of them, all of the scientists that were working on this suddenly got sick, and they thought it was food poisoning, but they hadn't eaten anything. So originally the scientists that were like, or the doctors, excuse me, let me make this a little more clear to you. When they all got sick and went to hospital to get help, they originally thought the people coming in must have had food poisoning because it was all of the symptoms of food poisoning. But when they did the research and they, asked their objective and subjective questions to the scientists that were all sick, they all had confirmed that they had nothing but water. And so in this documentary, the doctors wrote on the report, because they have to write up something as a documentation of like what they did, why they did it. They wrote in there that the scientists were poisoned by normal water. So, I believe that this is also used in some of the books that are written out there that suggest that water has a consciousness. And I think one thing that's really interesting too, again, relating to back how important water is, right? Water is used in baptism. The water has even been said to be used in curses and hexes, right? And I do know this. I do know this because I remember dealing it with my teenagers. But I do know that people clear hexes by standing or dumping salt water on them, right? So water is super, super important. But again, they say it's not living, but it has consciousness and memory. So things to consider. So why am I bringing all of this up to you today? Well, I mean, not only because water is super important element, but I bring this up for two reasons. One, you are made up of water. We've talked about this. 70% of your body, 95% of your brain. So there is a lot of water within you that you can affect. If the words that you are speaking to water outside of you, like in the experiment done, responded to the energy and the words behind, or the music behind, or the frequency that they heard, if it can respond externally, it can respond internally. And since your body is mostly made up of water, I just wanted you to consider, like, what effect you could be having on the water within you or the water in your kids or your coworkers, you know? So kind of a far out thought, but keep with me, keep with me. So, what impact do you want to have really? Just thinking about how, like in the plant story, you are a powerful being. What you say makes a difference to yourself. What you say to others makes a difference. It makes an impact. It shares your energy with somebody. And so when you think about the water and how it's responding to it, it's also doing that within you. And then the other thing is just as a reminder that as you drink water, which, hopefully you're drinking a ton of it, because like I said, every organism, and just like you, needs water to live. And soda and other substances, alcohol, whatever it may be, are not water. They are not replacing what you actually need in your body, and you are sweating out water. So water is definitely something that I encourage you to drink a lot of. But as you're drinking water, you don't have to be a priest or somebody ordained. You can bless the water before you drink it. You can thank it and you can bless it. And then you are setting that intention. And that's actually one of the scientists that I can't remember, Lynne, that wrote the book and did another thing about how water has memory. Her book was all about intentions. And she was talking about how all your intentions are affected. And so she did this whole thing about whether you're doing your yoga practice and like how you start out your yoga practice and you set your intentions and how that helps facilitate something. It actually helps move you closer in that direction. And she did the same thing with water. So she was doing an experiment on setting intentions to water. So your second point here is just that you can set a blessing or intention to water. Your words have power, they have energy, and water itself is used, as I mentioned in the very beginning of this episode. Water's function is to provide us with power, right? In some sort. It powers our life. It gives us life, essentially. It can't exist without it. So that's where I'm tying those two words. But anyway, you can bless this water. You can set intentions on this water, gratitude, and then set your intentions and then drink this water. It's just another way that you can be using water to aid you in your life and accomplishing what you want. And, whatever it may be, like in certain cultures, they use water for cleansing, for blessings, for baptism, right? There's nothing stopping you from using the power of water to aid you. And knowing that your words have the energy and have the frequency to also change the molecular response to water, right? So that's where the water has the consciousness. So, like, as I mentioned with Dr. Masaru, like when he said positive words, the picture showed something like water coming into something that looked like a snowflake, right? You have that power, and that power is in your words. And all you have to do is speak that words to the water and drink the water, right? So you are having a double effect in this case. So your words are going to have, without even saying it to water, your words are going to have that impact regardless. And then you can have that double impact with the power of the water behind it. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I really appreciate you from listening to the end. And as always, I know I don't ever say this enough, but if this podcast is, beneficial to you, if you are growing from it, if you enjoy listening to it, if nothing else, if you don't feel comfortable sharing this with other people, or people are so inundated with other podcasts and books and everything that's out there, because there is a lot out there. But if anything, if you would be willing to take less than a minute to go onto iTunes and star my podcast with whatever you feel like it needs to be rated at, or leave a review, it would really mean a lot to me. I would super appreciate it. And you know what? You will be helping other people, because if it's helping you, the chances are it will help somebody else too. So you can pay it forward. You know how they say. Anyway, I am sending you love, and you matter. Bye.